Okay guys, welcome back. We're getting ready to wrap up this training module, and this has all been about engagement, showing up, leaning in, giving everything that you are to everything that you do in life. And in this last section, we're going to really talk about energy, the energy of a leader. And we're going to use John Wooden's basketball team if we can. And we mentioned them earlier. You're a Bruin graduate. And what fascinates me about John Wooden in terms of being a peak performing leader is basketball is an absolute even playing field. You got the exact same court, you got the exact same number of players, you got the same rules, same ball. And yet John Wooden understood something, and it's called the 90-90 rule. Every one of our teams adopt this rule. And simply put, 90-90 means if I can get 90% engagement from my team, from my players, 90% of the time, we will be unbeatable, and they were. 12 national championships, 7 undefeated seasons, and this is what we're challenging you to create within your team.
All right, what would that look like for your team if you really led that team from a 90-90 perspective?
An engagement, all in, with a concept of being all in. I used to make my instructors jump out of airplanes. And even though we were knife fighting, the idea was I needed them to know what commitment means. I needed them to understand what all in means, and you can't kind of jump out of an airplane. You either jump in or you jump out or you stay in. And so,
or jump in.
Look at yourself. You're the energetic leader of your team. You create the bar. You set the bar. We talk a lot about the gap, closing the gap. So when you're going to show up for work right now, can you look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm all in. I am giving everything I can to this mission. I'm giving everything to this team. Why? Because I'm turned on. We've got to look back at those exercises we did earlier in this module. If your life is set up in such a way that most of what you're doing is on the turn off list,
from that fear place, or should or could,
you will not be engaged. There's not enough discipline on the planet to stay engaged if you're in an environment that turns you off. So we really need to look. We need to go back to that initial imagining, that initial strategy, those declarations and training. Have you set up your life? Have you set up your team in such a way that you are all in? You've taken ownership of the mission.
Right, and remember, it's back to you, because part of your job as a leader, part of your joy, is being able to show up yourself fully from that place where your heart is open, where you're really connected to those things that you're passionate about, that you they really matter to you, and they matter to you in all of what you're doing in the world. And the more that you do that, the more that you show up that way with your team, you're actually creating a space for them to do the same. So imagine if you show up and you've got your shoulds and your coulds, and you've got that fear and probably not going to happen, and shouldn't do this and should do that. It creates, even though there may not be a word spoken about it, there's an energy, and we talk about 9Q, and again, there's this energy that's created in that space, in your team space, and it's going to have an impact on the team. So then that's that negative side. So if you shift it around and you're really coming with an open heart, you're really showing up fully, and knowing that where that connection to, that heart connection, that heart opening for you and for everyone on your team, the more that you create a space that not only allows that to happen, but nurtures and feeds that fire, that's where you're going to find the engagement.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the concept, it's called TPQ, which is your team's performance quotient. And of everything we've shared up to you to this point, I really believe this is the game changer. This is your team's performance quotient, which is a summation of everyone's engagement level. So a really easy way to understand it. I've got 3 people on my team. One of them is a Navy SEAL. They're 100%. They're all in. The other extreme, this person is showing up. They're taking money from me, but they're spending their day on LinkedIn. They're already gone, so they have a 0% engagement. Then I have sort of that John Q. public who shows up sometimes, doesn't show up the others. They're at a 50% engagement. So I have 3 team members. I've done an engagement assessment, and my TPQ is going to be 50%. I got somebody at 100, somebody at 0, somebody at 50. So we average the engagement ratings of our team. And what we found out with the organizations we're working with right now in America, the TPQ is about 65%. That's the level of engagement. That's why people are showing up late for your meetings. That's why people are showing up not prepared. And you've got to really look at yourself, because you are the energetic leader of your team. You can't ask your team to operate at a higher performance quotient than you're showing up. And the other thing to recognize is that there is a great energetic inertia around this number. So I've got 9 people on a team, and we're at a TPQ of 65%. I bring in that Navy SEAL. What's going to happen over time is that Navy SEAL is either going to quit the team, which is what they'll do, because they're not going to hang around with turkeys. Or if they don't quit, they're going to be drawn down to that lower engagement quotient. And so recognizing that, managing that, when you walk in the office, are you all in? You know, we talk about pausing. And as a team leader, before you walk in that room, take a breath. Take a moment, get yourself connected, get yourself engaged, because when you step in, your team needs you to show up, to drive that energy, have the conversation. The other thing that's really important, I did a training yesterday with one of our organizations, and when they were doing their meetings, people were showing up with their agenda. I'm coming in because this is what I want, and they weren't coming in as leaders of the team. So what was happening in the meetings was 2 people would start to spin, these 3 people would check out, and there was a real drain of energy. So what we worked on is, not only are you there for your point, but you're there as a team leader to manage, drive, and support the energy of the team. And they had a training yesterday, and they said it was the best training they ever had. Everybody showed up, everyone was engaged, and everyone was in support of each other.
Well, it gets back to the model and being able to really imagine what it is that you then go into that space of declaring and the training, and then in that engagement place, it's really, if you can go in there and fully show up, and you are able to hold that intention, that declaration of where you're going, that's where everyone can connect back in. I wanted to just add that piece as well, and then it's less likely then that people have all of their own agendas, because if there's a really clear intention for the team, that's where you connect back in. So how much, when you show up, how much are you showing up from an open heart, from a really fully engaged, really being present and holding that intention for the team.
All right, so you've shown up, you're all in. As the energetic leader of the team, one of the things that we do that help people, it's a real easy visual, is I kind of break energetics into white lighters, vampires, and gray people. And what's funny is when we share this concept, everybody knows what a vampire is. Vampires are the life suckers. They're the people who, we can't do it, or they're the naysayers. And what happens is, you can have a team that's really charged up, really engaged, and that vampire can come in the room, and if they aren't effectively managed, they're going to suck the life out of the meeting, they're going to suck the life out of the team.
Maybe you've had that experience before.
I guarantee it.
Most people have. On some particular group, organization, team, you've experienced that, and the impact that it has on the team.
It will kill your performance. It will kill your engagement. The vampires have to be isolated. They have to be managed and ultimately killed. And that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor, of course. We did a training with a large public company, and after the offsite, I went to the CEO, and it was very clear there were 2 vampires on this 8-person team. And I said, "You're going to have to whack these guys." And he was a friend of mine. And so here's what happened. A year later, he finally fired him. But over the course of the year, he lost the 2 white lighters. He lost the 2 best players. Why? Because all the energy was, this is what happens. The vampires take the energy. We, as team leaders, should be feeding our white lighters. And what's a white lighter? A white lighter is that person who walks in the room and gets people fired up.
Just by the way that they show up, and that's part of what we're asking you to do in your team. Just because you're clean, you're clear with your energy, your heart's open, you're connected, you know where you're going, and when you walk in, you're ready and you're open and you're engaged.
Yep, and people feed off that and people feel that. So we've got white lighters over here, we have vampires over here, then we have the gray people. And the gray people are really interesting. They're typically energetically neutral, and you could have a lot of these on your team. And what that means is, if the gray people are around the vampire, you're going to find backstabbing, gossip. You're going to find you're going to find the great people adopting the negative energy and attributes. When the great people are around the white lighter, they adopt the white light energy, and they're more positive, and they're more motivated, and they're more engaged. And so as an energetic leader, look at your team. Now, again, be careful, because we all have a vampire inside of us. Am I managing that vampire, that person that says, I can't, I shouldn't, I'm not good enough, I'm not, whatever? Then I've got that white lighter. So I'm managing my internal energetic.
It comes back to checking in with yourself, because again, if you're in that place of, maybe along that vampire line, it's not going to be surprising that shows up in your team. So managing yourself, being able to go through this model with yourself and be able to show up fully again with open heart and model. Because what's happening is, as a leader, you're modeling what it is to show up fully in a heart-centered, powerful, and engaged way. So as you're modeling that, and as you talked about the gray people, that's when people are going to watch, and they're going to that modeling is powerful, even though it's not specifically spoken. Again, back to this 9Q that we talk about. It's an energetic. You're showing up in a particular energetic that allows other people to just kind of soak it in energetically and be able to show up more that way, more engaged, more excited.
And the way you do this, remember that imagination exercise we started the module with. You have to be able to see yourself fully engaged. You have to be able to see and feel yourself showing up all in, and then see your team, see how you react. John Wooden was never late for a training. John Wooden didn't ask of his players what he wasn't willing to give of himself. And so the real key of this module in how to master engagement begins and ends with you. And the joy and the gift of this module is, as you're able to elevate, as you're able to show up more in your life, the people around you benefit. Your genius, your joy, your passion show up. There's only one letter difference between job and joy. And our challenge to you is, stop showing up to your job, start showing up to your joy, manage that energetic, manage your environment, feed the white lighters, starve the vampires, and you're going to have a team that you love to lead and people love to be a part of.
And I want to add also that the more that you do that, the more that you show up in that place that we're talking about, that heart-centered, passionate, engaged space, there's clarity around that. And when you look at your team, and sometimes there are adjustments that need to be made, but as you hold that really powerful, heart-centered, yummy leadership role, it's going to become clear where and who resonates with that. And then if changes need to be made in the team, it becomes less of a reaction to and frustration and anger, and more of like, hey, this is where we are, and this is where we all need to be. And you as the leader is modeling that, you're showing up like that. And then if other people aren't quite ready for that, then there's a natural shift and change in the organization itself.
That's such a great point. If you've developed a team that's operating at a 90% TPQ, and you bring in someone who's maybe at a 65%, you've got that momentum. That person is either going to raise their energetic or they're going to choose off, because this team's moving so fast. We've got such an esprit de corps. It feels so great. I'm either going to rise to the level of the game or I'm going to step out. And so, as you can tell, we love this module, become a master of your team's energetic. Real quick review, what have we done so far? You've imagined your world-class, heart-centered, peak-performing team. You've developed the qualities of a heart-centered leader. You've created an ATR training protocol, so every single week you're raising your PQ, IQ, EQ, and SQ.
And 9Q.
And 9Q. And now you know how to show up to be all in your life. And in our next module, it's really where the rubber meets the pavement. We're going to show you how to drive wins every day for your team. We love training you. We love having you part of our program, and we're going to see you guys in our next module.
See you then.